Okay. So we are now, the meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Namo Buddhaya to everyone and greetings and metta to all of you. We are here today, yet again, we all have joined for this another beautiful Sunday, another wonderful Sunday. And we are very fortunate that today our most venerable Maggavihari Thero will be delivering another beautiful Dhamma discourse. And before the discourse commences, I would request few things from you. Please mute yourself unless you have some queries, some questions. And while you are listening to the Dhamma, be respectful towards the teachers, and you sit down in a quiet place at your home or wherever you are. Be mindful and have have sincerity in listening to the Dhamma. In that way, you respect to the teachers. And put a switch off the video, or if you like, you can turn on the video as well. It's up to you. These sessions will be live streaming on both the platforms, on YouTube, with these channels and our Facebook page. You may go there and see that. But for the normally, many of you are here in this Zoom already, and the links we have already shared with you. And you can forward to your friends and colleagues and to the devotees who would like to listen. Which place? Yeah, left. Okay. Namo Buddhaya. Good afternoon to all of you. Let us start our session. Most Venerable Maggavihari Thero, I think he had joined with us now. Suminda, it is Suminda ji, Dharamsena, is Bante is there already?
Yes, Venerable sir. I think Bante would be under International Institute of Theravada. And there are 2 accounts by Taraka.
Okay.
No, there's 1 account by Taraka. If you can give co-host to those 2 accounts,
No, no. To whom we should give? To IIT. Bante is there. I could see.
IIT.
May co-host. Yes.
Yes, and Taraka Vitanage. Right at the
Taraka.
bottom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. And so.
They are assigned. They are assigned as co-hosts now.
Yes, Venerable sir. Can we mute everybody else, Venerable sir? I think you can do it from the.
Yeah, we muted everybody now. We muted everyone. Sorry, sound. What is sound? They are assigned as co-hosts now.
Can we mute everybody else, Venerable sir? I think you can do it from the.
So shall we begin now? Hello.
Venerable sir, give us a minute. I think there might be some technical difficulties because there was a power cut. We are just coming out of a power cut which finished, and so just give us a few minutes.
All right. Take your time. No problem. Once you're ready, I will start recording the session.
Excuse me, Ante. Can you hear me? No, speak it out.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we are ready to start now. There are several power cuts here. Maybe between the Dhamma, during the Dhamma talk, maybe we have to experience a few minutes power cut because we have to change our current source to generator, and we have to change sometimes. This remember. Okay, we are ready to start now.
Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Homage to the Blessed One, homage to the Perfect One, homage to the Supreme Enlightened One. salutations at the holy feet of our most respected teacher, the founder, president of Maha Bodhi Society Bengaluru, and homage to the Maha Sangha, and my grateful regards to Venerable Maggavihari, Thero, and dear Venerable monks and Upasakas and Upasikas. I welcome everyone for this VESAKHA Dhamma talk series. First of all, on behalf of Mahabodhi Research Centre, Mahabodhi Society Bengaluru, I extend my heartiest greetings to every one of you. As usual, we are here today to listen on another very beautiful Dhamma Desana from Most Venerable Maggavihari Thero, the Vice President of International Institute of Theravada, Srilanka. Last week, we had a wonderful talk about Chanki Sutta from Majjhima Nikaya. And this week, we have another subject called Paccaya, the conditional relations. And Venerable Maggavihari Bhante will be teaching you the 24 Paccayas and how they functions, what are their natures, how these Paccayas we can see, we can experience in our own life, how these causes and conditions works interconnectedly, how the mind and matters they functions based on these dependent originations. So Bhante Maggavihari is expert in that subject. He will be teaching us and guiding us through this session. And this session is jointly organized by Mahabodhi Research Centre, which is the academic, the higher wings of Buddhist studies. And last time I have told you about the activities which we run. So Mahabodhi Research Centre is very fortunate to have Most Venerable Maggavihari Bhante with us. And he so kindly has accepted our invitations to teach the Dhamma. So once again, like the pure Dhammas, the rivers of Dhamma are once again flowing in the land of India. And it really gives us pleasure to do a special Dhamma talk series to mark this Vesak Buddha Jayanti. So with that intentions, I request all our students, the diploma students or the scholars and the truth seekers, and those who are listening to us in Bangalore, in across the country in different places, and in Sri Lanka, in many places in Australia or in Switzerland, in Europe or America. So I hope that this Dhamma talk series will ignite the light of wisdom in our hearts. And this Dhamma talk will surely blossoms the beautiful fragrance of Dhamma in our heart. And we can able to offer our great gratitude to the Supremely Enlightened Buddha. There is no other way to pay our gratitude to the infinite and infinitely compassionate, the Buddha, than by practicing his teachings. So let us put forth our hearts, let us be mindful of the Dhamma teachings, and so that we can get maximum benefits out of Dhamma. So may I request now Bhante Maggavihari Thero, the Vice President of International Institute of Theravada, to give his special Dhamma Desana on the topic Conditional Relations, Paccaya. Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you very much, Bhante, for your introduction, and welcome all. Today we are giving the lecture from the International Institute of Theravada in collaboration with the Mahabodhi Research Centre. And as Bhante mentioned already, we pay our salute to the Triple Gem and also to the founder of this nice institution, Most Venerable Acharya Buddha Rakkhita. So today's topic is conditional relations, and it was a specific topic that was introduced or suggested by the research center. It's not a particular sutta. It's not about a particular topic that normally we find in Abhidhamma, I would like to introduce this conditional relation, the notion of conditional relations under the Theravada tradition or the Theravada doctrine or the philosophy. It will be a mixture, like we'll be discussing matters of the mentioned in the Tipitaka and also in the commentaries, and also ideas introduced by teachers, renowned teachers of the tradition. And also I'll be touching some points regarding the disparities or differences among some Buddhist schools regarding this matter. The topic would be conditional relation. I hope you can see the board. Conditional relation. So in the Theravada perspective, when we talk about conditions and their relationship, you always need to think about two aspects: the cause and the effect. Cause and the effect. The normal explanation for cause, there are a few synonyms for cause. One is Paccaya. Effect would be Paccayupanna. Then there was a power cut. So the Paccaya would be, the causes are Paccaya and the effects are Paccayupanna. Then another synonym would be Hetu and Phala. Causes are called Hetu, effects are called Phala. Generator dani banana. Yeah. Conditional. Relation. Normal words, the aspects are cause and effect. Cause is normally rendered into Pali as Paccaya. Effect would be Paccayupanna. Another synonym is Hetu, and the effect would be Phala. There are various synonyms for these terms, cause and effect. But I would like to introduce some of the imperative notions, fundamental notions that are found or taught within the Theravada tradition about this conditional relationship. So in general sense, cause and effect means cause is supporting the effect. Effect depends upon the cause. So that's why normally we translate the Paticca as the dependent origination, the arising of realities depending on causes. So there are no independent arising according to Theravada tradition. There is an independent reality which we call the nirvana. Other than that, if something is conditioned or something is if something has an arising, if something arises have not been before, always it has to depend on something else. That is the very basic notion. The supporter is called the cause. The supported, one who gains the support, one who gains the support is called the effect. Supporter is the cause. Supported, one who is being supported, is called the effect. There are various ways that this cause and effect can be explained. But in first, we should know some very imperative, important, or significant fundamentals that govern this entire notion of causal relationship. The first would be, the cause and effect can never be the same. can never be the same. For example, if A is the cause and B is the effect, they can never be the same. They always has to be different from each other. That is a very basic notion. If A and B are the same, it means A is getting the support, B, for example, B is the effect. So this is the cause, sorry, this is the effect. If A or B are equally same, if they are identical, what happens is because B is getting the support, B is supported, A is supporting. If they are the same, imagine if this is the formula, B gets the support from itself. That means self-sustaining. Self-sustaining. The Buddha's doctrine, realities are not self-sustaining. It means a reality can never get the support of itself. Then one can ask the question about nirvana. Nirvana is not a self-sustaining, it's a reality that exists. So it's not supported by anything else. Neither is supported by anything else, nor it is supported by itself. So the idea of self-sustaining has been negated by the Buddha in his teachings. Therefore, if something is supported by, if a cause is supporting the effect, the very basic notion is cause and effect are not identical. They have to be different. They have to be different realities. So before we plunge into this notion of causality, a thing that we should keep in mind, according to the Theravada tradition, because other Buddhist traditions have disagreements about this what I'm going to say next, about this notion. According to Theravadians, realities, the idea of realities is very significant in understanding the causal relationship. Theravadians declare, according to the Buddha's teachings, as they explain, as they explain it or give detail this, realities do exist. This is the Theravada notion. Realities do exist. Realities are not mere illusions of the mind. There was a Buddhist school called the Yogacharas who had this who were of this opinion. According to them, everything is sort of a dream, and then the question of shared objects, like that, the shared experience that we have. For example, if 20 people are listening to this lecture, all 20 of them sees that I'm giving a lecture, and they all listen to the same words that I speak out. How do we confirm this? Because whenever we discuss with each other, our ideas do match. For example, if 2 people are listening to my lecture, and after the lecture, if they discuss about this, they would express the same idea. They have gained a similar idea out of the lecture. That means they have had a similar sort of an experience. So how do we explain this shared experience if everything is an illusion? So Yogacharas brought the idea of a shared karma. It means if we are experiencing now, if 5 people gather together at a table and see a certain cup, because all the 5 sees the cup. So the inevitable question is, if everything is made in your mind, how would all the 5 see the same cup? So one answer is all of the 5 have done a similar karma in the past, so that's why they came together, and so therefore they experience the same cup, a similar cup, even though it doesn't exist in the reality. According to them, it's only the consciousness that exists. That's why they are called Vijnana Vada or Yogacharas in another sense. There was another school called Madhyamikas. They were against this notion because they were refuting the Yogacharas, saying that you even accepted the idea of the existence of consciousness. According to the Madhyamikas, even consciousness cannot exist. Even consciousness cannot exist. Everything is an illusion. They have their notions for this. They do express the reasons for their idea explanation. I'll come to that later. So, but the Theravadians are of the opinion that realities do exist. It's true that they are momentary. It's true that they are momentary. They last for a very rapid duration of time, but during that time they do exist. They do exist. And there was another school called the Sarvastivadians. They were of the opinion that the Theravadians believe that realities do exist during their rapid duration. After they have arisen till they pass or completely vanish, during this small period, they do exist. There was another school called Sarvastivadians. They were of the opinion that even the past realities and the future realities, not only the present, do exist in a certain manner, in a different way. It's the present is just a manifestation of the past, of the future coming into the present state, and then it goes into the past state. So there are three states. So the realities are already, even the past realities that have gone or that have disappeared eons ago still do exist. They are, the argument they bring is because one can experience the past, one can recall the past. If a reality does not exist, how could one recall it? This was their argument, right? So I'm not going to point out which argument is better or what is the argument that we have to follow. So I'm just explaining what the Theravadians do. So please keep in mind, according to the Theravadians, according to the Southern Buddhist tradition that was preserved in Sri Lanka and which is existing or prevailing in countries like Myanmar, the realities do exist, though their duration is very short. Their duration is very short. So the thing is, now when we talk about cause and effect, cause is a reality that exists, the cause exists, and the B effect exists. Is very important. It doesn't mean that both the cause and effect has to exist at the same moment. It doesn't mean that. But some way or another, one way or another, the cause is a reality that exists, and it is not something an illusion. And even the effect is, it does exist. There are some causes which are called panyattis, the concepts that can become a cause. There are some non-existing natures that are created in mind, that are ideas of the mind that can also be a cause, but this is very insignificant when we are talking about the existence. So therefore, when we come into the notion of causal relationship, we have to keep in mind, according to the Theravada standpoint, there are realities, and these realities support some other realities. I'll repeat again. The conditional relationship explained in the Theravada tradition is about the support of certain realities given to some other realities. It's like now parents are supporting the children for their birth and also for their living. For that, the parents should exist, and also the children. That's why the support could be given. That's why the support could be given. Even our grandparents are responsible, or great-grandparents whom we have not seen, most of us have not seen, are responsible for our existence. So therefore, it is not necessary that the cause has to exist while the effect is arising or is persisting. Even a past reality can support a present reality, but for that the past has to have existed. Past has to have existed. Past reality has to have existed. So the idea of reality is very significant in Theravada tradition. If we are going to explain the conditional relationship without explaining the existence of realities, we are explaining a different doctrine. There are Buddhist doctrines that do explain this conditional relationship, but I'm explaining it from the Theravada perspective. Then one can ask the question, what about the Buddha's opinion? So it's something very difficult to be judged, because all the traditions claim that they are explaining what the Buddha mentions. So even the Buddha's same discourse can be explained in various ways according to how we understand it. So therefore, even if you directly go into the Buddha's teachings and explain and say that this is what the Buddha has meant, that is how you understood the Buddha's teaching. This is how the tradition of Theravada understood the Buddha's teaching. That is how the Sarvastivadins understood the Buddha's teaching. So therefore, Buddha is a unique person. He delivered a discourse and the listeners understand it according to their level of intellect. So that's why. So there are differences in their intellectual levels of the Savakas. So with the time, schools did emerge. So in this lecture, I'll be focusing from the Theravada standpoint, and Theravadians claim that this is what the Buddha taught in his doctrine. Then the realities, the existence of realities is very imperative here. Then we move on to a very famous clause that is being explained in the Theravada, in the Buddha's doctrine, as preserved by the Theravadins. Imasming sati. Idang hoti. Then the negation, imasming asati. Idang nahoti. Imasming asati, idang nahoti. Sati is due to its existence. When a reality is existing or due to its existence. So this is, if someone is knowledgeable in Pali to a certain extent, you know that this is a locative case clause. Locative case sometimes gives the meaning of an absolute. For example, while I went into the village, while I was going to the village, I saw a bonfire. While I was going is an absolute, clause of absolute. In Pali, the absolute is normally expressed by either by the locative case or the genitive case. Sometimes in the absolute meaning, the causal relationship is also hidden. There are various examples in the Tipitaka in the grammatical standpoint. So here, the absolute meaning is conveyed with the idea of cause. So therefore, while this is existing, and also we have to add the idea due to the existence of this. Imasming, so this imasming relates to is referred to the reality. I would call it reality A. Reality A. Now, Sati explains that is existing. There are various ways the existence can be explained. Due to this existence of this A, what happens? Idang. This is the reality B. Hoti exists. So due to reality A, due to the existence of reality A, the reality B exists or happens to arise, whatever it is. There are various ways that this can be explained, because it's not only the arising, sustaining in generations, arising, remaining in the mind stream uneradicated. The remaining, I would call the possibility of arising. All these are related to the conditioned relationship if we go deeper into the doctrine. Normally, we discuss the arising and persisting or sustaining in generations. So therefore, because of cause, effect arises or effect sustains, if it grows in generations. But also we need to keep in mind there are some other aspects also related to this conditioned relationship. For example, I'll give you an example. Think about the uneradicated defilements, which we call anusaya. Anusayas do persist or exist in our mind stream in a certain form, not in the level of mentality, but in a different state. It's called anusaya avattha, the state of anusaya. Even while we are doing wholesome deeds, still the anusaya, we are with anusaya. Why do anusaya persist within our mind stream or within our 5 aggregates? For example, think about the tanha. It is due to avidya. So certain realities remain in our mind stream as latent potencies due to some other potencies or due to some other reasons. In that sense, the conditional relationship is not for the arising, is not for the persisting of a reality that has arisen. It's to remain uneradicated. To remain uneradicated. I'm not going to touch upon these aspects because it's not easy to cover all in a one lecture. The point I want to emphasize is the realities. A certain reality arises or persists due to another reality. These A and B can never be the same. A and B can never be the same. This word sati indicates, this sati and hoti indicates the existence of the cause and the effect. Sati is related to this cause, hoti is related to the effect. Then the negation, imasming asati. Now, imasming here refers to the reality A again. Reality A. Asati is the non-existence due to his absence. Idang nahoti, the reality B would not occur, would not arise. Nahoti means is also the non-occurrence or non-happening. In both the cases, we are talking about reality. So keep it in mind that within the Theravada tradition, the conditional relationship, the notion of conditional relationship is entirely based on the idea of the existence of realities. It's based on the existence of realities. Then I move on to another aspect, another notion. Theravadians claim that the conditional reality, except nirvana, all the realities arise and stay or arise and persist in clusters. There is no reality that can arise only as a single entity. Now, even while we are talking about the rupa, the matter, is a collection or combination of 4 great elements, which are called the 4 great qualities, we can call. Normally, this cluster of rupas are called rupa kalapa within the tradition. Rupa kalapa. You may not find this word in the Tipitaka, rupa kalapa, but it's mentioned in the Patana that the mutual relationship is given from 4 great elements. A mutual relationship is found. So the Theravadians claim, the tradition claim, when you segregate this body or any other material thing which consumes some, which is extended, if you segregate or if you divide it, in the end you come with the tiniest particle that cannot be physically divided any further, but you end it with a particle which is extended. You extended means which consumes a certain amount of volume of space. This kalapa, this thing is not a one entity. It's a combination of 4 great qualities: the hardness, the cohesion, heat or coldness, and the bloating nature, which we call Patavi, Apo, Tejo, and Vayu. So we just draw. Now this is the tiniest kalapa. So this has 4 elements: Patavi, Apo, Tejo, and Vayu. Even in the mental side, the mentalities, the consciousness is unable to arise by itself. Consciousness is unable to arise by itself. This is quite different from the present day functionalism. The functionalists normally suggest that the consciousness it cannot be divided into its components. But there is an opposing idea in the Western philosophy as well, because they explain how the consciousness works. According to Theravadians, consciousness works in sequences in a certain pattern, and even one single experience of a consciousness. If you analyze this, now think about seeing a certain object. In this experience, Theravadians do divide it into certain components, these which we call mentalities. So in other words, chitta and chetasika, vijnana and chetasika, whatever it is. Consciousness is prominent in this cluster. It is associated by certain mental factors. this combination, it is an immaterial thing. It is an immaterial thing, not like the material stuff. This immaterial cluster is normally referred within the tradition. You can see this in the commentary level within the tradition as the Chittupada. Chittupada, C-I-T-T-U-P-P, long A-D-A, Chittupada. Chittupada is the combination of Chitta and Chetasikas. So if we just draw, it's an immaterial thing. We cannot bring it into a picture, but for our easy reference, if you think this is the consciousness taking a certain object, for example, this has consciousness Chitta plus various Chetasikas. So that is another point that we need to keep in our mind when we think about the conditional relationship. One of the very important fundamentals are in this aspect. Now these are clusters, reality clusters. All the reality cluster. Now, if you think about a reality cluster, either it can be a material cluster or a mental cluster, whatever it is. Always, another fundamental is any reality cluster should gain the support of another reality that does not belong to this particular cluster. That also makes sense in that, because if a reality cannot arise by itself, if a reality cannot support itself, the same thing, the cluster, if they are inseparably connected with each other, the cluster itself cannot sustain. It itself cannot help support it. Right? This cluster itself cannot sustain, support itself. The cluster cannot support itself. Therefore, any reality cluster needs to get the support of a reality. Actually, it's realities. Okay, anyway, reality A, reality 1 or 2 outside this cluster. That is also a very basic fundamental. If you are talking about the consciousness arises and pass away. Any consciousness that arises should gain the support of the previous consciousness. If you're talking about rupa, some rupas gain the support from karma. Sorry, the arrow should be this side. Karma. Some material get the support from the consciousness, chitta and chetasikas. Chitta jarupas we call these karma jarupas. And uttuja rupas gain the support from the Tejo Dhatu within another cluster. Ahara Drupas gain the support from the Oja of another cluster. So always, now this is the effect cluster. It gains the support from a different cluster. This Rupa clusters also gain the support from something outside this cluster. That's also very important. So what does it all mean? All means realities cannot sustain by itself. It cannot arise due to its own ability. Due to its own ability. Now this idea. Now the next point is the effect. Now I'm talking only about the arising and persisting aspect, not about the uneradicated potencies, because it may take the lecture to a very complicated level. For that, we need to study the doctrine step by step in a series of lectures. So now thinking about the arising. Now in all these occasions, if I change my color, this reference, now this cluster, mental cluster arises. All these material clusters arise due to a cause. Due to a cause. What the arising means, that's another point. What arising is. According to the Theravadians, arising means coming into existence, having not been before. This is also a very important aspect. Coming into existence, having not been before. Now, if this is the reality, now this is the cluster, it happens, arose, and it passes away. Before it's arising, it was no more. It was not there. After it's passing away, it is no more. Arising means coming into existence, having not been before. Having not existed before. And passing away means completely vanishing without hiding or getting stored somewhere. Now, our focus is about arising, because conditional, another point is conditional relationship has nothing much to do with the passing away. Nothing much to do with the passing away, because some have the idea, just divert away from the topic for a while, because it's also quite important to mention. Now, this formula, imasming sati idang hoti. When these exist, A exists, B exists. When the absence of A, B does not exist. This non-existence of B is not about the passing away of B. This is the non-arising of B. It's also very important. Now, according to the tradition, things arise and pass away. For this passing away, you don't need any cause or the absence of any cause. Whether there are causes or not, anything that has arisen undergoes the phenomenon of aging or decaying and naturally passes away. There is no necessity of a certain cause, or even the absence of a certain cause. So the non-happening of the effect due to the absence of cause is now, normally the generations goes like arising and passing away. When the causes are absent, the new arising is not going to happen. New arising is not going to happen. Idang hoti means the non-arising. It's not the passing away. That's very important to keep in mind. Buddha was not talking about the cessation of suffering. He was not talking about an annihilation. He's not talking about the final passing away. Cessation means the non-arising of the suffering that was possible to happen had the causes prevailed. While the causes were prevailing, this was possible to happen. This effect was possible to happen. This effect was possibility was there. Why is that? The causes were there. So when the cause was removed, before the arising, if cause has to be, now for example, the cause has to be removed before the arising of the effect. After the effect has arisen, even you remove the cause, effect will have its own living. It will undergo its own phenomenon. So if you want to prevent a certain effect, what we have to do is remove the cause before it arises. So that's why we have to remove the, if we want to get rid of the birth, we have to do it before we are born. So while eradicating the defilements, we get rid of the birth, next birth. You cannot get rid of this birth, it has already happened. And we cannot get rid of the aging of this life, even we become Arahant. Even Buddha had to face that. And we cannot get rid of the death. Why is that? This life has already occurred. If the life is gained, will decay and it will pass away, no one can prevent it. So only way is we get freed from getting a new life. For that, we have to remove the cause before the next life has occurred. So it means you have to do it now in order to get rid of the suffering of the samsara that is going to happen if we keep our defilements with ourselves. So here, the non-happening is not about the passing away, it's about the non-arising. As the causes are removed, this possibility is removed before it's arising. That is called cessation. It is the non-arising of the suffering that would have arisen had the causes prevailed. So I'll move into the topic of arising. So here, the passing away is a natural phenomenon. It's nothing much to do with the causes. There's nothing much to do. There is a relationship, because why does something passes away? Because it's made out of cause. That is the normal argument. Because if something arises, it arises normally due to impermanent causes. So if the causes are impermanent, how could the effect be permanent? That was a very fundamental logic brought by the Buddha. Therefore, in that sense, there is some relationship with the cause and effect. But you don't need any absence of a cause for the passing away of a reality. And why the reality is passing? Because it undergoes the phenomenon of aging, which is a very abstract topic I would not like to touch upon. If someone is interested, you can raise this in the question and answer session. So arising. What arising means? I'll come back, I'll explain it again. Arising means coming into existence, having not been before, having not existed before. This is the Theravadian's perspective. Now, Sarvastivadians were different on this matter. According to them, future do exist even at this moment in a certain way. So present is the certain manifestation of the future. And then it passes away. It's also goes into a different state. So therefore, Sarva Asti, all realities do exist. Sarva Asti. Sarva is all. Asti is existing during all the three times. That's why they were called Sarvastivadi. So they are not much supportive to this Theravadian idea. Then, now this point, now arising is happening, something which has something which was not there, it suddenly comes into existence and passes away. So this happening, this incident of coming into existence is the arising. What arises is the reality. Reality and arising are two different things. They are related, but not the same. Now think about the birth of a child and the child. Child and the birth of a child are not the same. Birth means getting delivered from the mother's womb. It's a sort of an incident. It's something like a happening, not the reality. Reality is the thing or the nature that is born. If the child is for example, in the simile, the child is the reality. It's coming out of the mother's womb is a certain incident. So arising as an incident, which is happening to a reality. Reality and arising are different things. But you cannot find a arising without the reality. And also the conditioned reality, you cannot find a reality if it doesn't arise. So they are interrelated, but not identical. They're not identical. Now, for this arising, what the Theravadians are claiming is, I'll bring a very interesting topic on this, why the Madhyamikas were a little bit different. Because this is a portion, this is a point that we need to clarify when you're studying the Theravada doctrine very clearly. Now, this is the effect cluster. It's a cluster. It's not the same thing. We know that it always arises in clusters. It's supported by something. It has to be supported by something apart from the cluster. It's also a very basic fundamental. Now, this is the cause, for example. Cause. Right? This cause is supporting this effect. This effect is arising due to that. It's completely, it did not exist before. It is suddenly coming up. Suddenly pops up. Suddenly pops up. It's something like we call it virtual, not the virtual reality. It's there is in modern physics, we have some not the electrons, protons, quarks that were produced in the Big Bang while we are living. Physics claim that some reality, some subatomic particles do arise and completely vanishes into thin air. They arise out of thin air and completely vanishes. It is something that has been proven. The term it doesn't come into my mind. It has been proven in a certain experiment that they are not talking about the subatomic particles that were created in the Big Bang. Even because the Higgs field is there, always particles arise and pass away. They just vanish quickly in everywhere in the space. It's so what the Theravada are claiming is something like that. Out of nothing means due to a cause, completely a reality arises and it passes away. So cause is supporting for its arising. So I'll come into a very strong argument against this, raised by the Madhyamikas. So if I recall what we already explained, Yogacharas, Vijnanavadins said that it's only consciousness existing. Everything other than consciousness is an illusion of the consciousness, what we are experiencing. Madhyamikas said, no, even the consciousness doesn't exist. Everything is an illusion. Everything is an illusion. So understanding this is the enlightenment, according to them. According to Theravada tradition, no, this is not the enlightenment. Enlightenment is understanding the realities in their actual nature and getting rid of the defilements. So their paths are completely different. According to the Yogacara, understanding that everything is an illusion of the mind and coming into that understanding would be the enlightenment. Now, the Madhyamika's argument, which is a very strong argument, I'm not sure whether it can be refuted very successfully by the Theravadians. Anyway, their argument was,
Dear friends, we are facing a possible power cut, I think. So please bear with us. We will be back shortly. We are sorting it out.
Sorry for the interruption. There's a power cut. Now we are back. Yeah. Now, what I was explaining was, now, according to Theravadians, effect arises due to the cause, supported by cause, but it's happening. It is coming into existence, having not been before. Have not been before. Now, the Madhyamikas were complaining on this notion. The argument was, yes, if you are saying that the reality is happening, having not existed before, they are claiming if a cause is causing an effect, if cause is the responsible for the arising of an effect, there are two possibilities. Either, now their argument was, if this is the cause, effect has to come out of the cause. Effect is coming out of the cause. So they claim that then it's not an arising, because the effect has already existed in the cause. If it is so, then the other argument they were raising. So if the effect is coming out of the cause, there is no arising. If the effect is arising newly, if effect is happening newly, still this is a self-arising, because cause has become just an instrument, just a supporting factor, but actually it's a self-arising according to them. So it was a very strong argument against the Theravada teachings. So Madhyamikas were claiming, if reality happens having not existed before, though it has been supported by some other cause, still effect is self-arising. Then he claims there cannot be such a reality that arises by itself, though it's been supported, because even though it's supported, the arising is because it has not existed before, according to them. So when it comes into existence, the cluster itself is responsible for its arising, even though the cause has given some support. If we claim that there is nothing coming out of the cause, if we claim that there's nothing coming out of the cause, and effect is not coming out of the cause, it's completely newly happening. So the argument was, then the effect is self-arising. There cannot be a reality that is self-dependent or self-arising. So therefore, none of the realities exist. This is their argument. That's why they claimed that other than nirvana, none of these chitta chetsika rupas can exist. So that was their point. Now it's a very strong argument when you think about it. But Theravadians claim, no, the cause is supporting the effect. Effect happens newly, but there is some sort of the responsibility. Theravadians lay the responsibility on the cause for the arising of the effect. Why does this effect arises newly? Why does this effect arise newly? It's due to the cause. The cause have a certain ability to produce this effect. What is that ability? What is the support? This support is normally explained as Paccaya Sakti. Ability of the cause, capacity of the cause to produce the effect. So Theravadians put the responsibility more on this causal side, while the Madhyamikas said, no, if you are claiming this is the phenomenon, the responsibility, capacity is within the effect. So if we explain this to a Madhyamika follower, he would surely say, you're talking about self-arising. But from the Theravada perspective, yes, there is a sort of a self-arising there, obviously, because it's happening by itself. Because it has not existed before. If something is not coming from here, there is sort of a self-existence, but without the cause, that would not happen. So therefore, it doesn't undergo, it cannot be termed as self-arising, because without the cause, that would not happen. So there's a slight difference in how they claim about the self arising. Because according to Madhyamikas, cause is gives a partial support on this in this. But Theravadians feel no, it gives the greatest support, because reason is without the cause, that effect would not happen. So why do they come into this? Because they, in the first place, they accept the existence of realities. Existence of realities. A very strong evidence for them, for the Theravadis, to claim that the realities exist is the shared experience, that we all share the similar experience. It's very mysterious, I would call, if we say that we are sharing the same karma to have the same experience. So Theravadians are of the opinions that the realities do exist and they do arise, having not been before. Why? Because they gain the support, because only when some effects are present, some causes are present. So this is the causal relationship, conditional relationship. Another point that I missed out. So cause can also be called condition. Effect is normally translated conditioned, ed, that which is being conditioned. That's another English translation for this. Yeah, and now I'll come into the Theravada perspective, point of view. Now, cause is supporting the effect. The ability or capacity of the cause to support the effect is called Paccaya Sati. It's called the Paccaya Sati. It is something that belongs to the cause, within the cause. There are two types of Paccaya Satis, that which we discuss in the Paticca Samuppada and what we discuss in the Patthana. The Patthana Paccaya Sati is secondary actually. The main Paccaya Sati is the Paccaya itself, nature itself. A cause. Now, keep in mind, cause is a reality. Cause is a reality. According to Theravadians, realities are natures. They are not substances. They are not substances. They don't have a shape. They don't have a. They are not extended. When the material qualities, nature's qualities is better. Intrinsic characteristics. When these qualities come together in the material side, they become they consume some volume and they appear as extended things, but it's a combination of qualities. The material thing they do not get the extended attribute, but all the realities are just mere qualities. A reality and its quality are identical according to Theravadians. It means hardness and the Patavi are identical. It's not that the Patavi possesses hardness. We do say Patavi has the characteristics of hardness for the convenience of conveying the idea. But in the actual sense, as the Theravadians claim, the quality itself is the reality. There's no duality in it. There's no duality. So now a cause is a reality, so it's a quality. That quality is mainly responsible for the arising of the reality. So that is the very basic Paccaya Sati. First Paccaya Sati is the reality itself. Its existing nature. Its true nature. Existing nature means being a reality. Being a thing or a nature that can be verified with wisdom. That is found in the existence. That is the nature of being a reality. If a reality, then we should be able to know it with our direct wisdom. So it has an intrinsic quality, inbuilt quality, a nature. So this quality or nature or characteristic is the main, is the reason for this reality to be a cause. So it can support something. At the same time, there are some secondary abilities such as Hetu Paccaya Sati or Arammana Paccaya Sati that we discuss in the 24 causal relationships in Patthana. So they are secondary. Whatever it is, secondary or basic, ability of the cause to support this, ability of the cause to support this effect is called Paccaya Sati. Why do a reality comes into existence? having not been before. From where does this cluster gain this ability to arise? Is mainly because of the cause. Because of the cause. This is something very difficult to be explained. In order to grasp the idea very clearly, what I can say is, as the doctrine claims, effect arises due to a cause. Why does it arise? Because arising is a sort of a speed. It's coming from non-existence to existence. Then this ability of arising is given to this effect by the cause. That is, the capacity that cause has to do this is called the Paccaya Shakti. So if someone in the Theravada perspective, right. In the Theravada perspective, a reality gains this ability to arising from its cause, right? Yeah. So then we'll move into another very important conditional relationship, very basic, fundamental. What Buddhism says about what yeah. Now, there are all the doctrines in the world, as the commentaries claim, can be put based on how they explain the cause and effect. Eka hetu, eka phala. Then eka hetu, nana phala. Nana hetu, eka phala, and nana hetu. Oh, sorry. මොකද වෙන්නේ? ගෙනිය වැඩන්නේ මොකද්ද? ගෙනිය වැඩන්නේ
Mr. Suminda, are you there? Yes, that is a power cut. Yeah. You can just do Anapanasati, a short meditation. You can just observe your breath and just patiently have patience and endurance. The Bhante will come back shortly. You can use this time for a reflection. Whatever Bhante has said, you just reflect upon that.
Yeah, sorry for the inconvenience, and there was actually power cut and some delays in the generator operation. So where we stopped was, now all the doctrines in the world, according to the commentary says, can be classified into 4 groups based on how they explain the conditional relationship. Eka hetu eka phala means there's only one result, one effect in the world, and it is caused by a one cause. I don't know to which doctrine this resembles, but anyway, there's a possibility someone would explain that there's only one effect in the entire world, everything is same, and is caused by one single cause. Eka hetu nana phala is very famous. It's the God, the divine creation. There's one ultimate cause, omni-capable cause that is responsible for the creation of this entire world. So one cause is creating all the effects. Then nana hetu eka phala. There are many effects, many causes producing one single effect. Nana hetu nana phala. Sorry, you beg your pardon for this. Nana phala. Many causes are producing many effects. Buddhism falls into this category. So whenever there is a cause and effect relationship is going on, always many causes are producing many effects. Therefore, always effect arise in clusters. That's for sure, that we already discussed. It's a cluster, reality cluster. And it's supported by many causes, not a single cause. Cause 1, cause 2, cause 3, and etc. Right? So this is what Buddhism explains. But when you study the Paticcasamuppada doctrine, you find that only one single avijja is producing single sankharas, and sankhara is producing vijnanas, and so forth. The sequence goes on. But this doctrine was expounded based on padhana naya. In Sanskrit, we may call pradhana. Pradhana naya. It's the method of explaining based on the prominent factor. Prominent factor. Out of the causes that produce sankhara, avijja is prominent. Then out of the results of avijja, it's not only avijja is producing sankharas, many other causes are necessary, are required. And when seeing the thing in the avijja's perspective, it's not only sankhara that the avijja produces. Many realities, avijja has the capacity to produce many realities. But out of these two relationships, the most prominent is avijja and sankhara. So that's why Buddha uttered this in one single cause and effect explanation. But when you go into the Patthana, we find many causes are producing many effects. And it's quite difficult to understand it in the one grasp. So that's why we normally need gradual studying in order to understand what the Patthana mentions. All right. So this is also one point. So I have discussed few imperative fundamentals in the Theravada tradition. Cause and effect can never be the same. If they are the same, it means effect is self-sustaining. And also I mentioned in the doctrine of Theravada, realities do play a huge role. Realities do exist. It's not that realities are illusions according to Theravadians. So causes, Paccaya are realities, Paccayupanna effects are also realities. So it's a relationship between effects, causes and effects. Actually, the support goes from this to this, cause to effect. It's not effect to cause. It's true that some effects can be cause and support mutually to the cause, and the cause can be effect. But in all the formulas, cause is supporting the effect. Then realities, according to Theravada tradition, exist or arise in clusters. There is no realities that can happen alone as a one unit, one entity. So always there are clusters. So these clusters gave the support of causes. So the next point is not every cluster, these clusters are not produced by one single cause. Many causes are responsible for the arising of the reality clusters. And then what is arising according to Theravada? Arising means coming into existence, having not existed before. And we found out a very strong argument against this by the Madhyamikas. They suggested if something is arising out of nothing means having not existed before, it should be self-arising, and Buddha would not agree on such idea. But the Theravadians claim, no, this arising, the responsibility lays upon the cause, not upon the reality, the effect. So the ability of the cause to support these realities arising is the Paccaya Sati, the capacity of the cause to support the effect. Yeah. So then we'll move on to explain some very basic explanations. Now, think about the consciousness. Consciousness arises and passes away. It happens in a stream, like a stream. Each and every consciousness is a production of the previous consciousness. Production doesn't mean that the following consciousness has to be identical with the previous one. Now this conscious cluster, Chitta and Chetasikas, for example, I'm giving you some very basic cause and cause-condition relationships. Now this cluster is a certain act, a certain reality cluster. It has its function is to cognize a particular object. It cognizes a particular object. Now, if this is the object, the act of knowing an object is called consciousness, chitta, and also act of getting attached, disliking, tasting the flavor. These are the functions of Chetasikas. So these are mental stuff, immaterial stuff. As the Theravadians explain, this act of knowing has a certain momentum. So I'm using the word momentum fetched from the physics, but it's completely different because the physical momentum is mass multiplied by the velocity, mv. But this is talking about an immaterial sort of momentum. It's an immaterial thing, consciousness and Chetasikas, but this act does not, the idea what the Theravada want to explain is this act has a certain speed, a certain momentum. So due to this speed, there is a sort of a momentum that when the act passes away, act of knowing passes away, the momentum does not cease. It's like when you run and suddenly stop, there is a certain momentum pushing you forward. So likewise, even though the consciousness passes away, the speed still remains, momentum still remains. And this momentum causes for the arising of a new consciousness, a new act, a similar act, similar in the sense of cognizing a same or another object, cognizing an object. So therefore, each and every consciousness is supported by the previous consciousness. So this also goes to the idea, according to Buddhism, that there cannot be a beginning of the samsara, because each and every mental cluster is supported by the previous mental cluster. This may seem bizarre to some, but that is how the Buddha has explained, and how to get into this idea. It's through meditation that one comes to this conclusion that there cannot be a beginning of the samsara, and which is completely different topic with deep analysis that we have to explain. So this conditional relationship, normally in Patthana, if you have studied or read this, you normally understand is anantara, samanantara, paccaya. Anantara, samanantara, paccaya. So it's the support of the previous mental cluster that passes away, supports the subsequently arising or proceeding mental cluster. So this becomes the cause. For example, A, B becomes the effect. So with regard to B and C, B is the cause, C is the effect. So likewise, the conscious stream is connected with each other. it also explains a very important phenomenon of karma. We know that if someone has done a karma, a certain potency or an energy remains, like that is the karmic force. Effects of the karma are given to this same mind stream. It's another very important question that people ask. If there is no soul, if there is no self, why do the karma affect the same person? So there should be some sort of a connection or underlying substance that which we may call self. Is a very good argument actually, but Theravadians solve this problem by this conditional relationship. Why is that? Each and every consciousness is related to the previous consciousness. Why is that? The speed or the momentum of the previous consciousness causes the arising of the following consciousness. So there is a sort of a relationship, immaterial relationship is there. So if a karma is done in this mind stream, its effect has to come to this mind stream because this force remains associated in this mind stream. It remains associated in the mind stream. So even someone has died, new consciousness arises it may arise in a different location as it is an immaterial performance, immaterial functioning. Still the relationship is there. Therefore, even someone is now, if this person is born in India, and the other one is in USA, for example, if you're born again, still the mind stream is related. Why is that? The last chuti, the death consciousness, and the patisandhi consciousness of the death consciousness while he was in India, and the patisandhi consciousness which occurred in USA are related to each other in terms of anantara paccaya, the momentum. Though it is not a material, it's an immaterial kind of a moment. That's why I mentioned that the word momentum may be something controversial, but I'm adapting it from physics. Otherwise, we don't have words to explain this. So that's why the karma is causing effects on the same mind stream. Why is that? Every consciousness is related to its preceding consciousness. So this is anantara samanantara paccaya. And another conditional relationship that is quite appealing or quite interesting is the anyamanya. So now think about the material clusters. Now this is the material cluster. We call Rupa Kalapa. Material cluster. In this material cluster, we have hardness, cohesion, heat or coldness, either, then bloating nature. These are the four qualities. For this to happen in a such a shape, we don't know exactly what the shape is. Even the tradition doesn't explain this. I assume it would be kind of a globe, because that's the normal shape, natural shape. So now this Kalapa material cluster is a combination of four qualities, four great elements, qualities. They are mutually supporting each other. Why is that? Because now when you explain about the Buddhism, about Buddhist teachings, we also need to keep in mind, we are explaining about a doctrine of necessity. What does it mean? So there are three main doctrines in the entire world. All the philosophies can be reduced into three main doctrines. The divine creation, everything was created by some special creature, which we normally call the God, Almighty. Then accident, like it's the divine creation, and spontaneous, the word doesn't come to me. Everything is an accident. For example, the Big Bang happened, so this is how it happened. If slight changes would have occurred, the existence would not happen in this way. That's the the doctrine that most of the scientists would like to embrace these days. Then the doctrine of necessity. Necessity of doctrine means there are laws governing this universe. So the universe has to be in this way. So there are certain laws. That's why it's happening in this way. Because, for example, the gravitational constant, if it was slightly, there was a slight difference in its constant, the entire world would have a different shape and different, we would not exist, as the scientists claim. So there are arguments against all these three doctrines and also supporting factors. Buddhism is talking about a doctrine of necessity. So we do have laws, the phenomenon. Normally we call them niyama. Niyama. Scientists argue where this niyama came from, right? Anyway, it's a different topic of argument. Niyama are the phenomenon, dhammata, another word. Not dhamma. Dhamma are realities. Dhammata are phenomenon. Now, the dhammata or the niyama is that this world is functioning properly as it is. So it has to happen in this way. In order to this to happen in this way, rupa kalaspas have to be tiny particles. Only then these kind of material stuff can be can appear. So that's why I'm talking about the doctrine of necessity. Now, for this is a necessity. This kalapa has to come into has to be an extended reality. It's a necessity. So this necessity is achieved by these four great elements. If any of these elements are missing, this necessity would not be accomplished. Why is that? Now think about a material thing, small particle, which we call rupa kalapa. This particle has to have some hardness. What is hardness? In another way, hardness is the resistance. Hardness is the quality that doesn't allow another particle to enter into its space. I'll repeat again. Hardness is the resistance or the quality that prevents the entering of another particle into the space it occupies. So when two hard things clash each other, they cannot penetrate each other. So therefore, hardness is a must, because if these particles, if hardness is not there and the other remaining qualities are there, the particles would penetrate each other and there cannot be a solid thing. These things would not be solid as this. The hardness is a must because of the necessity. Then cohesion. If only hardness was there, hardness now being a particle, and I'll come to the heat first now. Hardness and heat, because there should be a certain heat or coldness for the equilibrium to sustain. Otherwise, we can see the entire world would collapse. So there should be a certain kind of a heat or coldness anyway for this world to function. Then one can ask the argument, even in the absolute heat, absolute zero, the world can function properly, but none of this would exist. That's another case, because in the absolute zero, we would surely die, even though the efficacy would be 100%. So therefore, whole coldness or heat is required, right? So this is a very deep topic. We have to talk about the four great elements within a kalapa, outside the kalapa, and so forth. Anyway, so this cold and heatness is also required. It is also required for this. So then think about hardness and heat. Just these two elements, they don't have a shape. They don't extend. They are not extended realities. They don't consume any space. But the necessity is to have a particle. So then with the gathering of many particles, we get certain physical stuff. In order to do that, these two qualities, hardness and heat, has to be kept in a certain location, even momentarily, still in a location, and they have to be extended. The extension was made by vayu, the bloating nature. These qualities are pushed away. So then for that, we have to think about a central point in this kalapa. So these two hardness and heat are being pushed away, are being bloated. Then if only these three elements exist, that which we call vayu, bloating quality, the pushing nature, this hardness and heat would burst, they would disperse in this entire space, and they cannot sustain. For that, there should be a cohesive energy that holds these two elements, hardness and heat, into that area. So therefore, when now, if I draw it, if this is hardness in white color, right? If this is hardness and heat in the red color, right? This hardness and heat are being pushed outward by Vayu. But this still doesn't make it equal, balanced. For that, there should be a force working inside. So when they come into the equilibrium, what happens? Hardness and heat is not dispersed in the space. Why? They are being halted by cohesion. If there is no blotting nature, what happens? If only cohesion exists, it would collapse into its central point. So they still, it's not balanced. The necessity would not be achieved because it shrinks. So there should be opposing force, the blotting nature. So only when these two qualities, Apo and Vayu, are working against each other, pushing and subtracting or constructing these two qualities, what happens? They happen to exist in a certain space. So when these four qualities exist in a certain, it appears as a certain particle. So what does this mean? In order to achieve the necessity, all the four qualities are required. It's a mutual support. Mutual support. Mutuality is explained in anyonya, the Sanskrit word. Anyonya, it becomes anya, manya, Pali, anya, manya, mutual support. So likewise, in some clusters, in the reality clusters, there is a mutual condition. So in this sense, hardness is supporting, required. All the three elements require the support of hardness. Hardness cannot support itself because it's a very basic fundamental. All the remaining three get the support from cohesion. Likewise, each and every element is supporting the remaining and also getting the support from the others as well. So this is another conditional relationship. And if I go into another aspect which is important in our practice, for example, focus, which we call jhana. In Sanskrit, dhyana. Right? Dhyana. Dhyana is the good focus. We as living beings need to accomplish our tasks. For example, we need to, if I want to speak out something, it's also an accomplishment. When I walk, I keep steps. These are all physical accomplishments. Now, in meditation, in a higher level, we have to accomplish things such as focusing on a particular object for hours while we are doing yoga or whatever, while we are playing cricket or something. We need to have a certain focus in order to accomplish our physical, mental, and verbal acts. If the focus was not there, if the mind, all these are done by mind, consciousness, and mental factors. So in order for the mind and the mental factors to accomplish these tasks, it has to have a certain focus. It should be well focused on the task, what we are doing. If the focus is not there, the mind would not be able to accomplish the task. Now, for example, even while we are speaking, we may not focus much, but there is some focus. Otherwise, we are not able to accomplish this, because not only one single mind can utter a certain word. There is a huge process going on in the mind. Even in the brain, it's going. Physically, it's proven. So in order to have the cohesion of focus towards that accomplishing the task, mind has to have a certain kind of a collective cohesion towards it. focus towards it. That is achieved mainly by certain mental factors, which we call jhananga. They are vitakka, vichara, these are mental factors, piti, vedana, and ekaggata. Vitakka, the initial application, the force that takes the mind towards the object. Vichara, the quality that rubs the object, investigates to a certain level, not deeply. Piti is enjoying the object. It's not a very vital factor for every task. Vedana is enjoying the object, enjoying the taste of the object. Ekaggata is the concentratedness, the concentration, the one-pointedness. So in order to do our physical and mental stuff, I'm talking about not each and every consciousness. We are talking about consciousness by which we do our tasks, either meditation or speaking or verbal acts. For that, the mind has to take the object properly, even though we may miss out a certain word, but still, now for example, I want to say A, but accidentally I may say B, but even to say B, there should be some sort of attention. Otherwise I would have said something else. So therefore, this cohesion, so mind, to accomplish a task, these factors are necessary. So the doctrine of necessity is that as living beings, we should be able to perform threefold actions. So to conclude, the necessity is we need to accomplish certain mental, physical, and verbal threefold tasks. For that, the mind has to have a certain focus. But that focus is given by these jhana factors. So these jhana factors are responsible for our tasks. So likewise, it's a very wide topic, the conditional relationship. So these are the points that I would like to discuss and share with you all. So to sum up, cause and effect. Cause and effect can never be the same. If it is, then the effect is self-sustaining. Then causes and effects are all realities. They are not illusions of the mind, as the Theravadins claim. and it's a sort of a relationship between cause and two types of realities, and that cause and effect, the two realities can never be the same according to Buddha's teachings. And these realities arise in clusters. They do not arise alone as separate units. And these clusters are supported by some other realities which exist apart from the cluster. So always a cluster of realities need the supports of realities which are not within the cluster. They do have the support of each other, but always support from outside is necessary. Then we also explained that arising means coming into existence having not been before, and this speed of arising is given to this cause effect by the cause, and Madhyamikas have a very strong argument against this point. Then according to the Buddha's teachings, the many causes are supporting many effects. It's not a single cause and effect relationship. Many causes are supporting many effects. And finally, we explained some very basic causal relationships. The previous consciousness is supporting the following consciousness, and it's a fundamental requirement. This also leads to the idea that there is no beginning of samsara according to Buddhist teachings, and also how the karma is functioning within the same mind stream. Then the mutual support was explained based on the cluster of rupas, how the four great elements support each other, and jhana factor, jhana paccaya, how certain tasks are accomplished by gaining the focus. Yeah, so these all leads to finally to conclude a very important fundamental aspect, notion that was brought forward by the Buddha on this is, if something is getting the support from some other thing, he is suggesting that this cannot be a self. The idea he's negating is refuting the idea of a self that is sustaining by itself. So if realities are caused by some other realities and they vanish rapidly, it means there is no self here. So understanding or contemplating on the causal relationship removes our idea of self to a certain degree, to a certain amount, and then also removes. It's also against the idea of divine creation, which is called Vishama Hetu according to the Theravada, according to the Buddhist teachings, because it's not done by a certain almighty person. These realities has the capacity to produce new reality. It is not, realities do not have an intention of producing realities. It's like when two things clash each other, when the sound arises, when the realities are there, effects come out. Also, it leads to the doctrine of non-selfness, but it doesn't remove the idea of choice, ability of choice. The thing is, if even the choices are based on causes, yes, they are shaped by causes, not fully created. If each and every it's true that each and every reality arises due to causes according to Buddhist teachings, but if each and every choice is based utterly on the previous causes, it leads to the doctrine of determinism. Buddhism, personally, I believe, is not a doctrine of determinism. So therefore, always the possibility or space for choice is still there. For that, we have to explain the mind stream in a very deep, profound way. So that would be my lecture. I hope you got the idea. And amidst of lots of interruptions, but I hope that I was able to convey some idea about the conditional relationship, and hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, I give the forum to Bante to lead the remaining part. Yeah.
Let's give our big sadhu to Bante for his Dhamma Dana today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We are very thankful to Most Venerable Bante for teaching us this very deep teachings about the conditional relations in a very wonderful way. And Bante has, I think we all have understood and got this point of Abhidhamma from Bante with these examples. It is amazing that how this causes and condition works. I personally have not understood that deeply, but some of the points also I got it very clear through Bhante's lectures. So also the many students who are here, they do study Abhidhamma, but coming to Paccayas and Pathanas, they really stop there. They don't know how it actually functions. And Bhante's examples and his explanation through physics, through his experience, it's become so very clear to us how the Rupa Kalapa's workings, how our mind and matter functions in a most rapid way. As Bhante said, there is no base, it's causes and conditions, the empty phenomena, they are arising and passing away. So this is a wonderful Dhamma gift from Bhante's. So we are indeed very grateful for your compassionate teachings and enlightening the students and scholars and Upasakas, Upasikas who are here. Maybe it is not that easy to digest this vast topic, this pure deep wisdom, Panya, and it also needs your own reflections also to understand this. Maybe in future, I will also request here to Bhanteji to please please kindly give some more lectures on this topic so that our audience and students will be more benefited. So thank you very much once again, Bhante, for your wonderful and excellent Dhamma teachings. And also see the power interruption is there, but Bhante still gave us the Dhamma, tried his best from Srilanka. And it is indeed a very blessed time during this Vesak to listen this kind of Dhamma teachings from a very well-known and very well-trained Bhanteji. So from Mahabodhi and Mahabodhi Research Centre, I would express my deepest gratitude to Bhante. Bhante, how do you please guide us whether you take up some questions? Or...
Yeah, a few questions. Yeah, a few questions will be okay.
Okay, Bhante. Sure. So we open the question answer session. If you have any questions, maybe related to today's topic, you can just ask Bhante and get clarification. Suminda, if you are there, you can just check who are the participants who have any questions. Two persons have raised their hands. We will give chance to Sally in Dhamma. Sally, are you there? Yes, please. Please unmute yourself. You can't hear. Bhante, we can't hear. Could you able to hear anything?
I think you need to give her access. You have to allow her to unmute.
We have given some.
Okay, right.
We have given what?
Yeah, Siala, in the money, you can ask the question. Yeah, unmute yourself.
Good evening, Bhante ji, and also good evening, host Bhante. I'm just can only mute myself. So Bhante, I'm also Bhante's students. Bhante is already familiar with me, so I'm very happy. This today's topic is very wonderful and very quite deep. So may we continue the same topic about this the next section. Also, Bhante. So Bhante, if Bhante is free, may Bhante share with me the Mulatika that consider the terms of the effect of karma.
Okay. Sorry for that.
How may I send the email to my email to Bhante?
Yeah, sure.
How to get the source? Or maybe I will email to Bhante.
Maggavihari at Gmail. I think Bhante Sangaratana will type it on the chat box.
Okay. So But please share with me, Bante. Okay, Sadhu Bante. This is only my how to say, my ask Bante. Sadhu Bante. Sadhu. Okay. Okay, Sadhu Bante.
Sadhu, Sadhu. Thank you very much. So,
good evening, Banteji.
Yeah, Sadhu, Sadhu.
as you tell your names and where are you from?
My name is Vamsi. I'm from Bangalore.
Yes, Ramsey. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Banteji, recently I've read an article saying how Theravada is different from early Buddhism on Sutta Central. And it is written by Bhikkhu Sujato. And I had the small doubt that how do we, do we have a choice to reinterpret the early Buddhist texts with respect to the historical context? What I mean to say by this is that the Vedic culture or Brahmanism, it is just 4,000 years old, right? We have archaeological evidences and all kinds of evidences. But to say that the Buddha in his, even though I believe in rebirth and karma, to say that the Buddha in his previous lives was a Brahmin who lived for hundreds of years, this does not square with the rationality which the Buddha even taught. I mean, to say that the Buddha was born and he had some lotus flowers under his feet. Of course, the Buddha was Samma Sambuddhasa, no doubt. But how do we differentiate the literal interpretation of the legends, Buddhist legends and texts, into a rational, into rationality with historical perspective? That is one small thing, Banteji. And one more small thing is that some people, most people actually claim that Buddha actually had influence of the Upanishads on him. But when I recently had a study of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the earliest Upanishad, it had King Ajatasattu in it. Even the Buddhist texts have Ajatasattu. So what it means that the earliest Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and Buddha and Jaina are contemporaries in history, right? So it clearly means that the Buddha was a contemporary to the Upanishads, and there is no chance that the Upanishads had influence. I mean, Buddha was not after Upanishads. That is one thing. But at the same time, how can we understand this thing that Buddhists believe in Vedic god Indra, who goes by the name Sakra in the Buddhist texts? So how do we see this? How to see what to take literally, what not to take literally, how to think rationally? You know, I'm a new Buddhist and I'm in confusion. Please guide me, Banteji.
Yeah, okay. So I beg your pardon, your name?
Vamsi Krishna, Banteji.
Krishna, right? Vamsi
Yeah.
Krishna. Okay,
Yeah,
Krishna. Thank you for your very intellectual and deep practical question, actually. I'll start from the, I'll give my answer in this way that different monks can give different, have opinions on this. So personally, when I'm preaching or explaining the Dhamma, I go into the Theravada standpoint and just explain how the tradition explains. But my personal perspective or idea, understanding about the teachings can be slightly, I may have my own opinions on this, what the tradition says and what I think. But as a representative of the tradition, I normally stick with the tradition and explain what the book says. So normally what I do is I also bring, as you said, I bring, or if there are some counter evidences that do not obviously match with the doctrine, I also bring that as a preacher. So I always try to be someone who is objective and neutral, but my monkhood also restricts myself to a certain extent, representing the Theravada tradition. I'm a person who likes to think very rationally and openly. So as you said, there are many, not few, there are many stories that in the today's context, I would say the today's context are against the rational of human mind. One is one in the Jatakas, when the animals were talking, and also the lifespans that has been explained, that enormous lifespans the people have been living. So in this context, how to bring rationality to this? First thing is we need to understand the Buddha was a person who understood a certain truth and preached the Dhamma, and his explanation, his teachings were interpreted in various ways. So I bring this interpretation into two sectors. The things that we can find as the stories and so forth. I'm not refuting them, I'm just explaining how they can be categorized. I hope the traditional Buddhists would not be offended by this explanation. So stories and so forth, and also the practice. Regarding now, if I focus on the practice aspect of practice, even in the practice, there are various interpretations. For example, if you think about the Thai forest tradition in the present day, the Thai forest tradition has lots of explanations that are against the current Theravada tradition, though they represent as Theravadians. And in Myanmar, in Sri Lanka, very much similarities are there. And when we go into different Buddhist schools, there are different explanations. Now, as I explained, how the enlightenment is completely different from each other. It's also a huge problem when someone enters into Buddhism and try to grasp what Buddhism is, because there are various interpretations about the practice itself. Now, in that regard, what a wise man would do, he would study various traditions and try to understand what the practice is and adopt what is more rational and what suits him. So in that regard, I can speak only behalf of the Theravada tradition. Theravadians have a certain explanation about their practice from A to Z, I would call, and they explain this is how the practice grows and this is how one becomes an Arahant. Even the other traditions do have this explanation. And within the Theravadians, they have their particular explanation based on the Tipitaka they have preserved. Based on the Tipitaka they have preserved. And to my studies and to my certain level of practice, I find it very appealing. And it's something worthy studying, how the philosophy about this mind and matter and so forth. And there's the next argument comes about the Abhidharma, because Abhidharma is hugely influencing the Theravada tradition. So the argument of Abhidharma, of which existence and so forth, when it did origin and so forth, this is another topic of debate. So that is the one reason, before explaining this historical aspect, scientific aspect, and also the influence of other traditions and so forth, before going into such a deep, complex topic, I always prefer to explain what a tradition says, what an entire tradition from A to Z. In this regard, the Theravadians. So while we are studying the Theravadians, we find certain elements like the stories that we find and the practice. So in the stories, I do agree that there are lots of things that the modern person who is educated and the modern evidences would not agree upon. There are lots, not a few. There are a lot, even in the Tipitaka. Then regarding the practice, from the scientific perspective, there can be huge arguments against, because of the physicalism and dualism and so forth. The arguments are still going on within the scientific community, because there are lots of problems in explaining precisely. But with regard to the practice, it always explains about practical experience, that you are able to experience in the first stage of meditation, you will be experiencing this and this, and in the second stage, this and this. This is the changes that would happen in your mind and so forth. So in that case, the practice is very, very clearly explained within the Theravada tradition. But this practice, the practice of Theravadians, is being explained based on Abhidharma, based on sutras, some part of Vinaya, and also the commentarial literature, right? Commentarial literature. That's why I always say this is a tradition. I do not claim that, I do not say that these are the Buddha's words, because there are other traditions that claim that they are also explaining the Buddha's words. As like Bhante Sujato has mentioned in his extensive research, that they are in the quest of finding what is the early Buddhism, because they are finding scattered information from agamas and also from the Nikayas, and they are trying to make the figure out what would have been the Buddha's teachings in his original form, as they think based on the evidences that they have, which is a very daunting task, I would say, but they are progressing and they are making efforts on that. So and also we have to keep in mind that that research is very limited, and also lots of guessing going on in that, because if you think about now, the one way of saying, now a certain clause is found in the Nikayas and also similar clause is found in the Agamas, then easily they would come into a conclusion that this may be a very ancient writing. If certain sentences are not common to both, there is a very high possibility that these are later additions. So this can go any way, because maybe there was an original preservances were there, and some copies were wrong, or the others had the original and this may be wrong. So all the possibilities are there. So there's lots of guessing going on when you start to postulate what the early Buddhism based on historical evidences, because the sources are very limited and we don't have a living tradition, like things are preserved and it's a historical thing. I think you know what I mean. So that is another way of studying. As you said, is there a possibility that explaining the early Buddhism? Yes, they are making efforts. Then the thing is, point is, when we try to, with the human mind, when we try to explain, now think about historically finding out certain sutras and trying to get what the Buddha means, lots of personal subjective attitudes are also influencing their outcome. I'm not disrespecting any of the monks who are doing this. It's a very great quest, but we have to keep in mind their personal preferences, personal likings and dislikings are also influencing this explanation. So for that, when you go into, so that also we have to keep in mind, because that is another tradition which is growing on based on evidences to find out the historical ancient Buddhist texts. So in the end, what happens is the Theravada tradition, which has been preserved, possesses lots of information that are very difficult to be believed by the ordinary people of the modern day. And in the quest of finding out what is the early Buddhism, there are lots of limitations. Then what comes is, what is the reason of us following or studying Buddhism? That's another question. Is it for our intellectual interest? Yes, it's a very nice topic, finding out the ancient Tripitaka and finding out what would have been the Buddha's teachings. Then, and also based on that, they may explain a certain practice, a certain way based on the sutras and way of interpretation. And that's a new sect interpreting this is how the Buddha explained. Because why do I say it's a different sect? Because all the traditions claim the same thing. They claim that it was preserved very, very authentically. Then if you are following Buddhism for the purpose of practice, then it's another thing. For the purpose of practice, we have to focus more on what the practice says. So in that sense, Madhyamikas have a different way of explaining. Yogacharas have a different method. Theravadins have a different method, and also the modern scholars may also have different interpretations. So we have to be careful, because this is a new emerging school. So lots of personal interests can be influenced their explanation, because that is the normal human behavior. And it doesn't mean that the Theravadins are not influenced by that. Yes, they are also influenced by that, but it has been a tradition that has been preserved by a huge group of people. So there's lots of debates and things have gone on this, but they are always biased towards their Tipitaka and what they have preserved. That is also same for the each and every other Buddhist sect. So I'm not confusing you on this aspect. What I'm trying to say is, yes, what you say is a huge problem when someone comes into the Buddhist teachings to try to Buddha's teachings, because each and every tradition, except the modern scholars, each and every tradition has stories that are that most of the people of the modern day would easily refute or consider as legends. So therefore, I normally in my teachings, I do not touch upon these stories. I mainly focus on the practice, how it has been explained. So if it makes sense, if it is logical, and if it benefits us, and if we can see the progress, it's better to follow our rationale. That's what I mean. So in order to do that, what I suggest is study thoroughly, study the practice about the tradition thoroughly. So when we even we are studying the practical aspect, there can be lots of disagreements, a lot of questions may arise, but the aim is to get rid of the defilements and what we should do in order to attain that level. So I would recommend in that sense, better to study in a philosophical aspect the different traditions and figure out what makes sense. It's not an easy task, because a person like you who is thinking and deeply investigating and curious about the information, this is an inevitable question of this era. So I think that would be the best option. I'm not able to give you, I am not able to rationalize, and I do not attempt to rationalize these stories, because I personally don't take this stance, because it doesn't like, I just keep them as stories, and I say that's how it has been explained, and I'm not able to rationalize these stories, because to the depth I have studied, I don't see much possibility of rationalizing this. And as you said, is the Buddha influenced by some other tradition? As a human being, I personally think he may be surely influenced by the society that he was living. And also some of the discourses we can easily see were uttered against the Upanishad doctrine. Maybe, as you said, it was contemporary, but most scholars believe that it was something prior to Buddha. Even though it was contemporary, as you said, with the evidence of Ajatasattva and so forth, and if it was prior, whatever it is, there are teachings that seems like he was preaching against these doctrines. And what about the shared deities? It's another very good question. What about the shared deities, the Indra, whom we can find in Buddhism and also in Brahmanism and many. And it's not a case, because even this Indra can be found in Babylonia. His traces of his godship can be found there. Indra, and Marut also can be found. So these are also seems, and personally I think to some extent the legends that was existing in the Buddha's era, maybe he didn't completely go against them. He would have given the explanations based on these the normal folk knowledge as well. It's something that you feel when you study the Buddhist teachings. And finally, to my discussions with the ones who have meditated and have gained some concentration, ironically, the experiences that they have about the past lives and about the existence of the world, not only single person, many have claimed things that are against our common knowledge. So I haven't had that experience myself, but believable, trustable sources, my close associates, have claimed to have seen things that are beyond our capacity as well. So I personally keep it open, because even modern science and everything is not perfectly advanced and investigated everything in that sense. So I always keep them in an open manner and keep on investigating, because this doctrine is very useful and it's very practical. And more you study the practical aspect, I'm talking practical aspect, more you benefit out of it. That would be my answer. I don't know whether I answered it correctly or satisfactorily. That's what I would like to say.
Thank you very much, Mate. We have one question in the chat box. May I read out, Mate?
Yeah, sure.
This is from Nidana Chitta. Bhanteji, is there any difference between discourse approach and Abhidhamma approach to understand the teachings of the Buddha?
Yeah, as the Theravadians claim, in some places they do, I would say, do not match, and they have different approaches. But in the most places, Theravadians have tried to match them and bring them into the equal, into this common place. They have tried this. Thing is, now, for example, in the Abhidhamma perspective, we go into deep analysis. We have to keep in mind the Abhidhamma Pitaka and also the commentarial level of Abhidhamma. There are various stages on this. When you go into the commentarial level and also the subcommentarial level, we see that momentariness was very deeply emphasized, and the rapidness is quite amazing. Like amazing means the rapidness of the existence of realities has been divided into a very tiny duration. I'm not sure whether it's practical or not, but to a very deep level. But when you see the Abhidhamma Pitaka, we see we may see one doesn't feel so. That's why I would say one doesn't feel so. But in the sutras also, Buddha has mentioned that things do change rapidly. So the traditional perspective, they would try to match them and try to say, you see, this is what the Buddha mentioned. It changes rapidly. So this is the rapidness, and try to explain it. Yeah. So because in Abhidhamma, we go into deep analysis and we go into segregate things very sharply. But in the sutras, we do not find this kind of an approach. It has been explained something that we can experience in our day-to-day life and how things happen. So that's why people do like the sutras in this regard. It seems very practical. But a person with a deep intellect would always question much deeper. What is the fun thing underlying this? How does this happen? How rapid this consciousness is? What are the combinations of consciousness and mental factors, and so forth? There will always be some questions when someone is deeply analyzing the sutras. So I personally think Abhidhamma provides some answers to these questions, not to all, some answers to these questions. So it seems like when we are studying, there are two different layers. So the Sarvastivadins also do have Abhidhamma explaining there, and also it lies beneath their sutras. So that's why modern scholars tend to explain that Abhidhamma is a later development, because Abhidhamma is not common within the traditions. Anyway, so the approaches are different. Most of the approaches are similar. For example, if you think about the consciousness, mental factors, they do arise together. They are mixed with each other. We can take evidences from different sutras like Mahavedalla and so forth. Because Venerable Sariputta suggests that they are inseparable and they are always mixed together and so forth. And Abhidhamma also explains a similar explanation. So in that sense, there are lots of similarities, but also when we go into analyze it deeply, I think Abhidhamma is explaining it in a very sharper level. than the sutras. And still I'm explaining based on the within the Theravada tradition. Within the Theravada, if someone sees this from an outside perspective, he may have lots of questions about this, because to most of them, Abhidhamma is not Buddha's teachings as their findings suggest. So within the tradition, yes, I would say there are similarities and there are some different approaches that we make on this. Now think about Madhupindika Sutra. Madhupindika Sutta, it explains about the Vedana, then the Sanya and Vitakka. It seems like we can explain what we experience, what we feel, and then we recognize, and then we think about it. So it happens normally in a sequence. But when you explain this in Abhidhamma perspective, even at a one mind moment, the feeling and recognition could happen. So when we practically read a sutra and we see the explanation on Abhidhamma, sometimes people may feel a little bit of discomfort based on that. But when you have studied the entire Abhidhamma doctrine thoroughly, you feel that what the commentary says based on Abhidhamma also makes sense in a different aspect. So therefore, to sum up, yes, they are very similar in one sense, but there are differences in their different approaches.
I think we have come to the end of this question and answer session. So, Bhante, we don't want to leave the session, but it is already 2.5 hours
Yeah.
of your teachings, and that's been a very excellent Dhamma sharing session. On the day after tomorrow, on the 10th of May, we have an international seminar on the living legacy of the Buddha, which is also organized by Research Centre MBRC. Bhante would be also addressing us on that occasion on 10th of May at 4 p.m. So we will be opening this our live streaming platform, the YouTube and Facebook channels, where you can watch Bhante live. The Zoom will not be there because this will be from Maha Bodhi Society official page. So I request all of our participants and Dhamma students, you can also join with us on 10th of May, which is called the Enlightenment Week, the Bodhi Saptaha, we call it. And this Bodhi Saptaha has been started by our teacher, Acharya Buddharakkhita, from 1956. So every year we celebrate for a week-long celebration. 10th is the inauguration day. So, Bhante, I invite you once again personally to join and give your address on the occasion of this. So with that, Bhante, give us blessings and share the merits with everyone.
Sadhu, sadhu. So do we share merits?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Idang wo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idang wo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idang wo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Akasatta ca bhummatta deva naga mahiddhika. Punyantang anumodhitma chiran rakkantu sambuddha sasanang. Akasatta ca bhummatta deva naga mahiddhika. Punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha desanam. Akasattha cha bhummatta devanaga mahiddhika. Punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha savake. Chirang rakkantu tan sada. Idamme punya kammang asavakkaya vahang hotu. Sabba dukkha pamunchatu. May this merit of studying or discussing and listening Dhamma, with this merit, may all of us be able to attain the supreme bliss, the Nirvana. And also we wish, may the Buddha Sasana prevail long, so this doctrine can be studied and understood and benefited by many of the beings. Buddha Sasanang Chirantitatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantitatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantitatu, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu. And lots of thanks for the Mahabodhi Research Centre for inviting me to give this lecture, and also to the Bante Buddha Datta, right, who was hosting the nicely hosting the program. And also may we also share merits with the great Acharya Buddha Rakkhita, who initiated this wonderful organization, Maha Bodhi Society. And thank you for everyone for listening, and wish you all the best and success in your life. Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you for you and Sangaratna Bhante and IIT team especially for coordinating and assisting us technically. Without your support, it wouldn't be possible. And thank you for the nice flyers is making our volunteers, and we share merits with every one of you. May you all be well and happy. May the blessings of the Triple Zen keep guiding you on the path of enlightenment. That Namo Buddhaya, everyone. We will meet again.